Hey there, thanks for tuning into Duckbricks. I'm Chris, and today we're going to be taking an early look at the brand new LEGO Monkey Kid, the mighty Azure Lion, coming out on June 1st, 2023 for around $80 US. Now this is a massive brick-built, almost mech-like form of the Azure Lion himself, which is going to be a really fun and exciting build, primarily using the teal and flame yellowish orange or keto orange, as well as the blacks and purples. I cannot wait to put this together, and it is yet another amazing LEGO Monkey Kid buildable figures / mech, and without further ado, let's just jump right in to the review. Okay, so here we have set number 80048, the mighty Azure Lion. It comes with 789 pieces and retails for $80 and 75 euros, which I think, for what you get, is fairly okay, if not on the slightly overpriced side. Not quite as bad as many of the other items on the Monkey Kid list though. This set comes with 5 minifigures, the exclusive to the set so far, Monkey version of MK. Spoilers for those who haven't seen the latest season of the TV show yet, although it is a clear minifigure advertised in these sets, so I think that we're past the spoiler window at this point. We have Pigsy in celestial armor for the first time. We have a return of the Azure Lion in minifigure format, which only originally appeared in the Monkey King Ultra Mech. We also have the Ink Demon here, just kind of a standard grunt, as well as the Monkey King himself in a jungle or kind of original style outfit from the beginnings of the Journey to the West, which is one minifigure that we've seen before. So really the only 2 brand new minifigures in the set are the first 2 here, and I think a good point is to start off this thing by just looking at the minifigures themselves. So I want to kick things off by looking at, well, the Azure Lion himself, who is one of the, basically the star of the show here. This is a returning minifigure, and if you want to hear my full in-depth thoughts when he first came out in the January wave, be sure to check out that review, but it is always really good to get him in another set. I think this is one of the best LEGO Monkey Kid villain minifigures that we've gotten yet. It is a really menacing design. He's got a dual color cape in the black and purple, which is very nice, a new mold for the headpiece here for the lion hair, and he does have 2 expressions. So he has kind of an annoyed expression here, and then a more fierce expression on the other side, which is always a fun one to get. Of course, he has the ink part of himself kind of taking over this side, which is a very unique detail for the figure itself. The sword is using the new weapon pack of sword molds for LEGO Monkey Kids, so when you get one, you get them all, and overall, it is just a really cool villain design to get for this character. The Ink Demon, on the other hand, is honestly not super interesting. These are kind of basically non-canon to the TV show because they really are just here in the sets to be cannon fodder for the heroes to battle. Honestly, I could give or take them, but I do like that we have some form of standard minion. In the show, they don't really look like this. They mostly just look like ink versions of existing characters used to torment the heroes for different forms, but here they're kind of just more of a generic army, which is okay. I don't necessarily mind it, but I do understand LEGO does need to include these characters just to provide some conflict in the set. Moving on to the heroes, the other returning character here is Monkey King, and he comes with this nice little brick-built cloud. We've gotten a few of these over the course of the Monkey Kid sets to have the characters be riding on clouds, but this one does look really nice. I can just picture it like in the TV show. He'd jump on the cloud and then leap over and then just start flying off like this, so it's a really cool and dynamic thing to get. Unfortunately, my complaints about this minifigure do stay the same, and I am surprised I'm complaining about this because I will admit it is very nice to get leg printing. It is, admittedly though, I will have to say, very awkward to have a very clear delineation between a one color for the top half, one color for the bottom half, but not have the legs be dual molded. It feels like they could have definitely dual molded it and it would have made the minifigure a lot better, but they simply ran out of budget. Either they had the budget to print on the side of the legs and not do dual molding, or they had the budget to do dual molding but no printing on the side of the legs. They chose to prioritize the side of the leg printing here, which I do understand, but it is a shame because of course then when he's going like this, you can clearly see the print doesn't continue. If this was dual molded, it would have solved a lot of problems, and right now this kind of feels like early collectible minifigure style design, where they were trying to make it fancy with printing on the side of the legs, but they didn't quite have dual molding figured out yet. So that feels like a bit of a miss to me, but I do understand with budget constraints, this is just the best they could have given us, given the amount of frames or element frames and new mold frames in the wave. Moving onwards, we can take a look at Pigsy in his celestial garb here. One thing I really like is that while each of them have a team uniform here with the celestial outfits, every single one of the characters has a very unique motif to them. For instance, Pigsy here has a pig-like design for the emblem on the side of the chest, which is so cute. I love that little tiny pig design on the side here. And on the back, it kind of continues down. You can see a simplified, almost aesthetic logo version of his rake there. So you can see the 4 prongs of the rake on the back there. Each of the different characters have their respective weapons or respective emblems on the back of their torsos. So I really do like how, even though they are wearing the same outfits, there was a surprisingly high amount of unique graphic design that went into creating each of these celestial armors. And you can see that in my mega review, which I posted a few days ago, as well as the reviews of the other individual sets of this wave. The only big miss to me for this figure does unfortunately result in the mid-legs not being printed. We know it is possible for LEGO to print on mid-legs. They did it for the first series of Harry Potter collectible minifigures when they introduced the mid-legs, and they also did it just for Pigsy in the January wave when we got him for the MK Team Hideout set, but I guess they just didn't quite have the budget to print the legs, and they do feel very just plain being the standard white, especially when you line up the team like we did in the Mega Review, and every single other character had specialized printing on the legs for this particular outfit. Not a huge deal though. I like how they have unique outfits, but I do really wish this was printed. Lastly, we have the Monkie version of MK. He is using his standard brand new outfit, which appears in 3 of the sets out of the 4 of this wave. However, this one is unique to this set because he has the monkey tail as well as the headpiece, which is a unique head print to represent the monkified version of Monkey Kid himself. I really like this headpiece. It is very unique. It does look a lot like how he looks in the show. The expression is pretty perfect, and while I do feel like maybe they could have pushed it even further and made maybe like the torso be ripped and showing the monkey fur coming out, that would have been really cool. I understand though, again, working under the budget limitations, having the dual molded legs is really nice to get for the main character here, and I really do love the unique design of the facial expression for the monkey version. I'm sure a lot of people really wanted this after seeing the show, and now we finally have it. But with that, we can set aside the minifigures and just take a look at the main build, because of course the main build is really the star of the show here. Now, to me, this feels very much like it is not a mech, and instead it is just a gigantic scale version of this guy, where Azure Lion, spoiler alert, this is spoilers for the finale of Monkey Kid Season 4, so please turn away if you have not seen it yet or care about getting spoiled. Here we go, that's your warning. But at the end of the show, the Azure Lion essentially overthrows the Jade Emperor and becomes the new Jade Emperor. He becomes the Emperor, and the Emperor was depicted as kind of this larger-than-life format in the show, so maybe we could see a battle against a larger-than-life version of Azure Lion. That would be really cool. I would love to see that, and that might be what this depicts, or this could just be something random that LEGO designers kind of came up with. Sometimes they just kind of do that for Monkey Kid, where they just give us random sets that just never appear in the show, which is kind of funny because LEGO does produce the show, so it doesn't really make too much sense to me. But hey, you know what? Whatever's best for the story, they wanted to include it, so we will see what this exactly entails for the show itself. But as of right now, I think we can just talk about this in terms of posability, aesthetics, and building techniques, just like we do on all of our other action figure style LEGO reviews. Now, in terms of posability, you can move the legs back and forth. This is about the furthest forward you can move the legs, unfortunately, because it does clash with the armor piece around the belt, so you can't really have him in a kicking motion. I guess if you splay the leg outward more, you can get it to raise even higher like this, but you can't have it be actually moving forwards unless you have it splayed out. Although that honestly isn't too bad. I wonder if we can make him actually... Probably not, right? Like we... Okay, alright, let him cook. He's cooking. Okay, so we can get him to balance on one leg. That's actually really funny. And I think that does go to show the amount of strength that they put into these builds. Yes, this does not have knees. Unfortunately, it does not have knees. We know that they can give knees to large builds. They did it for the Samurai X-Mech for Ninjago Crystallized, but they chose not to give this one knees, which does feel a little bit of a step backwards to me. I feel like that LEGO can support large mechs with knees nowadays, but they definitely did want to make this easy to play with. You can literally have the legs in whatever pose.
plop them down, and, well, I guess don't plop them down that hard so the foot doesn't pop out, but the idea is that you can just plop down a mech and then kind of just wiggle it around and it will stand up okay, especially for kids with not a lot of function or dexterity in their hands. They don't want to be able to spend too much time fiddling around with a build to pose it. They've basically made it such that you can just pose these however you want just by plunking them down to the ground, which is something I do like, but I do kind of feel that LEGO has pushed it a little bit too far in the other direction compared to stuff like Exoforce, which were falling over all the time, just toppling over all over the place. This does feel like they've overcorrected a little bit too much. Now, in terms of the articulation of the arms, you can move the arms pretty much just how you would expect. You can move them up and down like this, backwards and forwards. The elbows themselves can rotate. There is no separate articulation for the hands, although you don't really need it because you can achieve pretty much all the poses that you want to achieve just by using the elbow joint, unlike some of the other mechs, which do require some hand articulation. This is like fine. You can get almost every single pose you could possibly want to get for this character just by moving the elbows around, which is something I do appreciate. And you can of course pose each individual finger on the hinges. Even this back finger is mounted on a pin to axle stud converter, so that is a very nice usage of that piece there. And then lastly, you can move the head back and forth, so up and down, back and forth like so. The jaw can open and close, and you also have articulation in the shoulder armor, so you can actually swing the shoulder armor backwards and forwards and really just angle it however you want, which is a really nice way to replicate the LEGO Lord of the Rings or Ninjago Skulkin armor piece, which is used on the minifigure itself. Now this character is technically, in terms of a build, he is a mech. Like, there is a spot which opens up for him to be seated in, but this is the absolute bare minimum, and I think clearly what this is supposed to be. If it appears in the show, it is definitely not supposed to be a mech. I think it is just supposed to be him. What LEGO does is when they're doing a set, they try to include space to include the figures because kids just like being able to put minifigures inside their builds, so if you want to, you can put him inside himself and then have it be closed up and make this kind of like his avatar, but clearly I think it is supposed to be him. LEGO just usually puts a cockpit in certain sets just to allow you to play around with them in that way if you want to, and what's nice is like they do that for like the Star Wars droid gunships, and they do that for stuff that doesn't make sense to be piloted by anybody, so I think that is definitely just a side effect of LEGO wanting to improve the play value of this build. Now, there are a lot of things to like about this when it comes to building techniques and aesthetics. For one of the most impressive building techniques to me is the amazing parts usage of the Ninjago molded dragon jaw piece as the back hair or mane of the line itself. This is such a unique and inspired parts usage, and it actually works really well. I never would have thought that piece would be used for anything other than Ninjago dragons. I mean, you can see it here. This is literally in the latest Ninjago Dragons Rising Wave. We've got that dragon headpiece being used on a mech right there for Aaron's mech, and that's typically used for dragon heads. But here, they're using it for the mane of the hair, and that is so smart. I love how that is done. That is actually kind of genius, like really cool usage of the piece there for the hair of Azure Lion. That is one of my favorite things about the set. One of my other favorite things about the set has nothing really to do with the mech, but more to do with the accessory. Folks who watch the Monkie Kid TV show knows just how important this is. This is basically the ink scroll that he uses to trap his opponents in. He was himself trapped there for a long time, or his friends were trapped there, so it's very cool to get this as a large-scale buildable figure-like accessory, and my favorite thing about it is the parts usage of the garage doors to form the links of the scroll. This feels very right to me. It is really good how this is actually something that you can hold and play around with. It is so smart in the way it's done, and typically I feel like tacked on awkward stud shooters don't normally do it for me, but this actually really works out well because the scroll literally shoots out ink blasts, so it does make sense that the scroll does have a shooter mounted on the end. If you don't want him to be holding it, you can stash the scroll on the back as well, so you can just have this kind of be mounted right on the back, so he kind of is carrying it alongside himself, which is a very cool thing to have fully brick built in the set itself. I really love and appreciate that. And one last thing about articulation, he does have a tail, so you can have his tail move back and forth. No tail on the minifigure though, so that's a little unfortunate. Unfortunately though, what I will say is that the rest of the build, especially the torso, does feel almost a little bit too simple for my liking. It is a very 2D style build, where you just have these shoulder elements being used for like the muscles or the pecs there, and then you just have this large helicopter windscreen being used for the front of the torso. It just feels like there could have been a lot more detail in the way the front torso is built, but unfortunately, just looking at it, especially from the side, it feels very flat to me, and it feels very much like they had to incorporate this windscreen piece just to allow him to be able to be seated in the build, and that came with some compromises, especially the chief of which being that the torso just doesn't feel that good to me. The head, I think, is also done pretty well for the main, but it's not maybe quite right. I don't know what's off about it, but there's something about the eyes that doesn't necessarily scream lion to me. It's kind of funny because Legend of Chima made a really good brick-built lion head back in the day when they were doing their vehicles. That really looked like a lion, and they did not choose to use that technique here. They're doing it completely differently, which I understand because that was a little bit larger than what you get here, but I do feel that LEGO already nailed the large-scale brick-built lion head before, and this, I don't necessarily know if it screams lion. It's just something about the proportions, and I think it's the placement of the eyes that's really throwing me off. It doesn't feel quite right to me. But honestly, that's just my opinion. I know that this is definitely something that will differ from person to person, but I do feel like this just feels just shy of a couple iterations of being the perfect build. Otherwise, though, I do like the way the legs are constructed. Even though it doesn't have knees, I do like the design of the legs themselves. You can move each toe, which is very nice. I like how you can do that. And of course, you can actually have the sword be posed and moved around, which is a nice sort of detail for this particular build. The blade does look a lot like the blade the minifigure uses, which is a very nice touch. I do like how they were able to kind of replicate the blade there. And overall, I think there's a lot to like about the set, but I am mixed on a few aspects. The torso, the head design, and the lack of articulation in some aspects do kind of drag this down a little bit to me, and makes the set feel almost like it is a set that would have come out maybe a couple years ago. LEGO has evolved a lot in the past few years when it comes to mechs, and while this would have been perfectly great and very good, even just in 2020 or 2019, it does feel a tad dated by today's standards, especially when you look at a lot of other amazing mechs that they've done, like for stuff like Ninjago, like Zane's Titan mech, Jay's Titan mech, we have the Samurai X mech, all sorts of really great large-scale figure builds that achieve greater articulation and just look a little bit better and more intricate than this. Overall though, not a bad set, just one that I feel is fairly mixed, but as I've said many times and I will continue to say, a mixed or mid Monkie Kid set is always just, you know you're going to get a good set when you buy a Monkie Kid set. They're always some of the best LEGO sets that LEGO ever makes. This one I feel is just a little bit outdone by some of the other sets that they have done in the past, for both Monkie Kid, but also for other mech-based LEGO themes. And lastly, I do want to talk about the price as we wrap up this video. This retails for $80 and 75 euros, which I think is okay. 70 would have been a lot better. I think $70 is a pretty perfect price point for this, but maybe even 75 because you do get a lot with it. This comes with 789 pieces, giving it a 10-cent price per part ratio, which is right around where you want it to be. But for the amount of stuff you get, I don't know if I necessarily am believing that this is worth $80. But it's close. 70 or 75 would be a lot better. It's not as egregious as some of the other price sets in this wave, so it is definitely something that isn't too bad in terms of price. I just feel like maybe, like most LEGO sets nowadays, it could be a little bit cheaper. But with that, we have summed up our review of the mighty Azure Lion. Let me know in the comments, what do you think of this build? This is definitely going to be a really interesting one to see people's reactions to. I'm very curious to see what folks think of the build itself. Do you like it? Do you dislike it? Let me know as usual in the comments, and thanks so much for watching this review.
Alright, and with that, we have summed up our look at the mighty Azure Lion. Let me know down in the comments below, what do you think of this model? Do you like it? Do you dislike it? How do you think it stacks up against some of the other amazing LEGO Monkie Kid mechs that we have gotten over the years? And so, without further ado, thank you all so much for tuning into Duckbricks. Be sure to like and subscribe for even more LEGO news, reviews, discussion, and analyses coming your way very soon. Thanks so much, and bye for now.